One lousy invoice for the whole month. Lost cat. Where's the dough in that? Tuna in a can opener? Case closed. Next job needs to be big and cash up front. Rent, rawhides, gas for my ride. Bills were taking their toll. This snooper was standing firm. No freebies, no hard luck clients. Then she walked into my office. Miss Gnomer, she said as she tried handing me her card. A looker for sure, but her clothes said flea market, and I'm not fond of fleas. I didn't see her as a cash up front type, and I just wasn't having it. It's called getting paid in the nose work business, and my nose is my business. Bills, I reminded myself. Hang tough, I said to myself. And I began to point her to the exit. Then the waterworks started. Tears confounded me. I would give my last milk bone to make them stop. I grabbed some tissues for her and spun about as I considered my next move. She blurted out her story and there was no stopping her. It seems her gardening partner, Stanley the gnome, had disappeared. To hear her tell it, this Stanley had quite a way with plants. He'd been wearing boots, buckled belt, and a large cone-shaped hat. Got it. Quickly, I gave Miss Gnomer a nod and made for my jeep to find the missing gnome. Once on the road, I began to feel better about the case. There may not be much moolah to be had, but at least it would keep my mind off bill collectors. I was greeted in Gnomeville by a real peach of a fellow who told me it was my lucky day. The annual Gnomeville Gnomefest was in full swing. I spied a little gnome fishing. He had managed to hook something. Wasn't much of a fish, more like a minnow. I would surprise him with a heftier catch. Maybe he'd be real thankful like and spill a little info on Stanley. As I nabbed the fish, I started thinking of fishy things. Like the fact that Miss Gnomer didn't just strike me as the gardening type, not a speck of dirt on her. My fishing buddy was tickled pink by the big fish and gave out that Stanley was a very well-known gnome about town. I went on down the path where I saw a couple of stone-faced fellows eyeing up each other. Time for a cross-examination. No, they haven't heard of Miss Gnomer. Yeah, they had heard of Stanley. Everyone knew Stanley. He was a legend among them. Total green thumb, total plant whisperer. A shoo-in for this year's Golden Shovel Award. 100% pure gold, they marveled. Quite the treasure. I puzzled over this as I joined in their ring toss game. So how was it Stanley was so well known, while nobody seemed to know his partner, Miss Gnomer? Why did she assume he was missing? And what kind of description was boots and a cone-shaped hat? Everyone was wearing boots and a cone-shaped hat. The game ended in a toss-up and I moved on. A group, herd, a flock of gnomes welcomed me to their bowling party. Of course, Stanley would win this year's award, they said in unison. Why, as soon as they picked themselves up, they planned to skedaddle to the main stage to see Stanley claim his big prize. The gold shovel would be awarded right after the winner of Name That Tune was announced. I love Name That Tune. If I could nail that win, I could be on stage with Stanley. I shot a few hoops with a gnome on top of the giant mushroom. Unfair advantage unless you took into account he wasn't very flexible. Name That Tune, he told me, was at the bottom of the main stage. That's when I noticed some nosy Parker in the woods. Were they snooping on me? Snooping on a snooper? Now them's some real swell doings. I tapped out a few notes on the piano for fun, then checked out the nominations for the Golden Shovel. Stanley was indeed a total shoo-in. Just then I heard the first notes of a song and knew Name That Tune had started. I dove for the buzzer and yelled out, "No! Gnome on the range!" And just like that, I won. I started weaving my way through the crowded gnomes to the main stage. When I reached the podium, I saw my prize. Not gold, not anything that was going to pay my rent, but it was no time to play sore loser. I still need to find Stanley. I went up to the podium to give the crowd my thanks. What? There's frantic movement behind the stage curtain. What pea soup had I stumbled into now? Stashing behind the curtain, I saw a very tall gnome and a little fella tied up in a wagon. Stanley? I gave chase to the tall fella. They were getting away, but I managed to grab a handkerchief. Was that a large M? Miss Gnomer? I went back to help Stanley. Poor gnome, he had been put through the ringer. As I made my way back, the pieces all came tumbling together. I had caught Miss Gnomer in the act of disguising herself as Stanley to claim that gold shovel for herself. She used me to find Stanley, and she got away, but she had not gotten away with a shovel. I admit I had a few thoughts. That gold shovel could pay a lot of bills, but at the end of the day, I'm just too much of a stand-up guy to pull a fast one. As I handed the shovel over to Stanley, the crowd went hot.